go up to?
So, yes, today we are talking about the ultimate guide to working from home. Talk about upsell and big promise, like the ultimate guide.
That's
Um,
the only one you need, Lawrence.
well, and what's even scarier, I just realized is that I'm wearing exactly the same outfit in my photo that I'm today.
Oh,
makes,
yes, you are.
makes it think like I don't have any clothes, but
Your uniform.
it's my uniform. Yes, this is how it's my branding.
Yeah.
My branding. Where's Jane when you need her? So, so today we're going to be talking about a few different things, and essentially, I think actually we might as well just do that. What are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about why this topic again, because we did touch on some of these topics way back in our very first virtual meetup.
March.
We're going to be talking about Zoom etiquette. We're going to be talking about office setup. I'm going to be sharing with you my offsite fail-proof job brief, which sounds really big, but it's not that big, but it's important points. We're also going to be talking about being a team player virtually, or should that be virtually being a team player?
Being a virtual team player.
Okay, we'll go with that. And of course, questions at the end about anything and everything, meaning of life, all that sort of stuff. Throw it in. So why are we talking about this again is the obvious first point. And, I think when this pandemic started at the start of this year, the general feeling out there was that this was going to be something that we might have to live with for a few months. Was kind of the feeling, wasn't it?
Mm.
And I even noticed when, literally a couple of weeks before the first lockdown happened, I was speaking to a well-known retailer and I said to them, do you have the ability to have your team go off-site? And the response I got then was, we just can't do that.
Mm.
And I think if this pandemic has shown anything, it has shown that you can and you possibly will have to do that. Now, some businesses out there still have not gone fully off-site. Some of them are still in that mentality that this is a short-term thing. And the reality is that we don't know how much longer this way of working is going to exist. What I do know is that some of the things that it has brought to the surface, some of the changes that have gone on, are things that people perhaps want to integrate even when things do go back to similar to what we'd had previously. I think that there's a lot of change that's going on at the moment. People tend to fear change, but this change can actually be quite good. And if I look at some of the stats, excuse me pulling out an iPad with the stats on it because my memory nowadays is terrible at the best of times. But a recent ABS snapshot said that between March and May, 46% of Australians worked from home, 7% increase the number of hours working from home. Up to 60% want to split their working time between home and office. So we are seeing massive change going on, more towards home working, which is why this topic, again, is really important, especially now we're in stage 4 restrictions where unless it's an essential service, you have to work from home. So that's what kind of prompted this topic again today. And hopefully, if you have questions regarding any of this, please feel free to ask them as we go.
And of course, I know we have a few people up in Sydney joining us today, so it's not so dire straits for you up in Sydney, but it is really, it could be relevant in the future.
I think the reality is that we're going to see pockets of breakouts happen for the time being until some sort of vaccine or way of treating this comes forward. And so we need to be able to pivot quickly and to be able to embrace technology and new ways of thinking in order to make sure that we are still available to work. So let's have a look at a few points here. When it comes to mental health and well-being, one key fact, human beings don't like change. So, we're programmed over time essentially to like stability. We like certainty. And so change is something that is actually quite threatening to people at the best of times. Lockdown has thrown all of our standard routines we've had out the window. We're feeling more stressed because we don't feel that we have as much control over how things are running and operating. And as a result of that, we might be turning more to coping mechanisms that we may have which produce a less healthier lifestyle. I know for me, I've become a hobnob addict. I've spoken about this a few times now the last month, but give me a chocolate covered wheat biscuit and I'm really happy. And this has been, a coping mechanism for me, emotional eating. But for other people, maybe there's an increase in drinking that's going on out there. I know, again, another survey, 22% said they were eating more snack food. I'm in that bracket. 40% were consuming more alcohol. 10% were consuming less. 58% were doing more screen time. 38% spent more time cooking. So really what this says is that we need to be able to set clear boundaries around how we break up our day, and that will help us to regain a little bit more control again. So, being able to establish what times you're going to be doing work, what times you're going to be doing exercise, what times you're going to be doing dedicated to yourself, and being able to just relax a little bit as well. And that means establishing new routines as well. So if it comes to exercise you can't get out, whether or not you might use TRX cables or resistance cables or some form of home gym or cardio, what kind of plans you have around eating well or taking some time out to chill, whether that be meditation or mindfulness or listening to music, reading a book, watching a film. I'm aware that I'm talking to a room full of creatives, so it might be something more creative like painting, illustration, poetry, some form of articulation of the soul. So that's one thing to consider about working from home, is how do you maintain some sort of mental health and well-being first and foremost. Vanessa, you want to chat a little bit about Zoom etiquette?
Oh, this is one of my favorites. And, I think most of us are doing this on a daily basis. So it's just great to recap again on the Zoom or Skype or whatever it may be etiquette. So as always, dress correctly, even if it is only from the waist up.
Even if it's exactly the same thing that you wear all the time. So
do look presentable. It does make a difference, and we do need to look, still very corporate. Well, not necessarily corporate, but presentable. So just dress correctly, no pajamas. And I did actually, the reason I write that is because I did actually have someone turn up to a Zoom interview with me in their pajamas.
Oh no.
They were at home. It can be casual. So yeah, one of my.
I did apologise afterwards.
Wasn't Lauren. Another one which is really important is sitting up straight. I have seen people sort of, laying back and, really, really casual. And the thing is, when you do sit up straight, you are presenting yourself well, and you come across clearly. It actually affects your voice as well. If you're really casual and you're sitting back here and, you don't have that right presentation. So it's one of my favorites. Also have the correct lighting. Again, I say this from experience. I've been on interviews with people and all I see is a, shadow because they haven't actually looked to see where the light is that day. I think for day-to-day Zooms, it's okay if it's not perfect. But if you're going to an interview or you have a really super important meeting where you're presenting, make sure that you have the correct lighting and also test it out beforehand. And also, as I said before, test it at different times of the day. If the lighting was fantastic at 10 o'clock in the morning, it can be completely different at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This is one which Lawrence and I are good at. Have a clean and tidy background. So the great thing with both Zoom and Skype now is that you can set a nice background and you can have anything there that you want. If you don't want to put a green screen or a screen at the back, just make sure that, we're not seeing all the dirty dishes or somebody's books or personal photos in the background is also not great. So just make sure it's clean and tidy and presentable.
We'll add also that Canva now has a template for Zoom backgrounds as well. So if you want to create something quick and easy and personal branded, Did I say Zoom or Canva? Sorry, I meant Canva.
You said Canva, but it is for Zoom.
Yeah.
And also you can search Zoom backgrounds, and the Zoom ones also work with Skype. We've only just, I don't know if it's only just because I've recently updated Skype, but Skype has the same thing where you can put a background on there as well. So make sure the video is working and the camera is clean. That's a good top tip. I know that I opened up one of my other computers the other day and went to go and do a Zoom, and it just wasn't working properly. I hadn't used it for such a long time. So make sure beforehand that it's working, and that part of the camera on the computer is actually clean. One of Lawrence's favorites, be on time. And for Zoom, being on time is actually getting there 2 minutes early to log in and connect. It does actually take 2 minutes by the time that you click onto a meeting. It asks you for the meeting password and the code, and then it slowly, you know, brings everything up. So being on time now is actually 2 minutes early to get it all up and ready and being there at the right time. Staying focused, also super important. And I know that is really difficult sometimes in hour-plus long Zoom meetings, but like any meeting, if you were in a room with anybody else, you need to stay focused on what's happening. Don't, you know, check on your phone halfway through, because you can see that, or even if you can't see it, you're looking down at it and you're not looking where you should be. And my last and most important point, smile. I always see, thanks Claire, I always see people that, you know, they're focusing, of course they're focusing, but you know, where you only have what you can see in front of you, you need to see if people are okay and if they're happy and engaged. So
yeah, I think
smiling is an important one.
Another one that I just thought of then, and this is really hard in this day and age of homeschooling, but if you have a really loud background and it's perhaps a Zoom meeting, to make sure that you put yourself on mute, because, you know, obviously we can't control the little ones. They're going to be bored and frustrated as much as anyone else. But I think the more we can try to reduce or eliminate that background noise during larger group calls, the better as well.
Yeah, and look, we know it's difficult. Everybody's work, especially in Melbourne, you've got, as Lawrence said, homeschooling, both partners are home working. It's really difficult.
It's a challenge. Mm.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, setting up your office so that it is work from home. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the crappier titles I've come up with in recent times. Have a designated space to work from. I know that can be hard. I saw on the news recently some footage of someone who'd set up their office in their toilet, which to me clearly indicated that they were really short on space. But some of the things we need to also consider is things like, you know, there's been an increase in since the start of lockdown in people with neck pains because their computer's at the wrong height, or they've had to work on really in spaces that aren't suitable for them. So even if it's making sure that you have a space on your dining table or something like that. Keep in mind also, some people associate particular space with a state of mind. I know for me in the past that I associated exercise with the gym, meaning that I would go to the gym specifically to exercise, and I found it hard to get into that same state of mind, not in the gym. And so I think people do have that habit of creating a space that is associated with a particular state of mind. So creating a space where you can begin to get into that proper state of mind for work is perfect. And make sure it's properly lit and feels work-friendly for you as well. The other thing, of course, is internet connection. We're becoming so reliable on the internet nowadays. And, you know, obviously there's still people out there who are on ADSL, but nowadays there's, of course, NBN. And do you have a backup as well? If you're working with clients remotely, what kind of backup do you have to be able to make sure that you can receive large files and to be able to send them back once that work is done as well? So whether or not that means you have a backup plan available. I know a lot of places nowadays are promoting 5G modems that are available, but these are things to consider as well.
Yeah.
Do you have the software? This might seem like a really obvious question, but I know of some freelancers who don't have Creative Suite at home. And so, particularly in a time like this, where it's very hard to guarantee any kind of work, you may need to weigh up, generally a month's subscription to Creative Suite should cost a few hours of your freelance time. So if you've got a week's worth of work, then you should be able to justify paying for that month of Creative Suite. However, if you don't want to do that, there are alternatives out there like the Affinity software that you can purchase for a one-off payment that can replace things like InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator. So there are options out there. Just making sure also that your software is compatible with your client's setup as well. I doubt there's going to be anywhere nowadays that's running on Quark 6 and Corel Draw, for instance, but just making sure that the software is compatible is right. Who is your client as well? And this is more about the briefing process. So, if you're working largely with design and advertising studios, you should have an expectation that the brief you're going to get is going to be a little bit more comprehensive than what it would be if it was a non-design client. Perhaps a small business who doesn't really understand branding properly, or who just thinks that branding is a logo and that's it. So being able to know in what ways you're going to be able to speak to clients and have a briefing form around that is going to be really beneficial as well. And thinking outside the box, and this is really about pivoting business nowadays. So for instance, I spoke to one freelancer recently, and while he hadn't had any freelance work, he had been getting royalties from a font that he created. And I thought that was actually really smart and really innovative. So, the question I tend to ask people nowadays is, how do you pivot what you offer so that it's available in new and valuable ways to people? And this even comes down to watching the news. And I think many of you may have noticed last week that Coles announced that they're no longer going to be producing print catalogues from the start of September. And so when we hear news like that, thinking about what kind of new trends is that going to create? Now, Woolworths did respond pretty much straight away and say that they were going to keep their catalogues as a point of difference, even though their online service had been up something like 70%. But this is going to have an impact throughout the industry. So, for instance, printers. I think the printing company that were doing Coles catalogues have estimated that this decision is costing them $32 million over the course of a year. Yeah. And inevitably, a loss like that is going to have an impact on a number of jobs with that organisation. But the bigger question is, does that mean also that traditional print catalogue designers are now being forced into a situation where they do have to start upskilling into areas that involve how they translate that digitally as well, which is something we've been talking about quite a bit over the past few weeks too. So it's really about listening to the news that's happening out there and thinking, how is this going to impact what I do as well? I talk about my offsite no-fail job brief. Now, this came about because within recruitment, when we get offsite work, to be completely honest with you, it generally tends to terrify the hell out of most consultants. The reason why is simply because when a freelancer is on site with a client, there's obviously the ability to have more instant ability to see where the work is at and to determine if it's going in the right direction or not, if basically the client's needs are being met. When it goes offsite, it's harder to do that. So this is what I've been saying to my freelancers and clients for years now, and it really translates well into what we're doing nowadays, having to work remotely. So for many of you, these points are going to be really, really, really obvious. So I'm hoping I'm not telling people, how to suck eggs or anything like that.
It's great to have the reminder. And
however, these are fundamental points. So firstly, obviously never make assumption about what the client is after. Ask them in detail about what that final outcome is, and agree on the number of hours you think it will take or a deadline on this project. After that, always reverse brief back to your client. Always put in writing what it is that you understand a project to be, how long you understand it is to take, and what is the outcome that the client is expecting. Update the client daily. In my world, you can never over communicate. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean that you kind of send messages every hour or something like that. That would be a little bit much. But if you're updating that client at the end of each day about where you're at and asking for feedback, you're essentially covering your ass. Because if something goes wrong, you can refer back to that email and say, I sent you an update there with this and this in it. So it's really, it might be the difference between getting things back on track and getting in the right direction and having it go totally off track. Of course, once the project is done, get feedback afterwards. Are they happy with the job? Would they recommend you? Because particularly when you're a sole trader and you're wanting to build a reputation for being a rock solid creative professional, feedback, testimonials, they all are social proof that convince other people that you are exceptional and that they should be working with you. So always ask for feedback at the end of each project. It really is that simple, making sure that you have it very clear at the start, updating, make sure you reverse brief, update daily, and get feedback at the end. How to be a great virtual team player.
Yeah, so that sounds better now, doesn't it?
It does.
We all know I think we all know how to be a good team player, but how does that resonate when you're working remotely and you're not seeing people face to face and communicating with them face to face? So I've got about 7 points here that I think are important and can help. So being a great team player means meeting your deadline. So if you're going to do something, then do it and do it well. And keeping to a deadline actually affects the entire team. So if you're not keeping to your part of the deadline, that may affect the rest of the team. And that's not really being a team player. So if you say you're going to do something, then do it and make sure you keep to that deadline. Being open-minded. This is being a part of a team player is being open to other people's ideas and perspectives. That means honing in your listening skills and being receptive to feedback from co-workers. So make sure that you listen to their ideas because you might even learn something new. Appreciate others' work styles. So figuring out how to read people well with a variety of personalities can be challenging, but particularly in today's multi-generational workforce. So this means Gen X's, Gen Y's, all of them, they all work in different styles. And we need to be open to that and tailor our communications to their styles. And again, you may actually learn something from other people's working styles by being open-minded. And maybe if something's not getting across to somebody, say to them, what's the best way that I can communicate this to you? Or how do you want to be communicated? Mm-hmm. Some people like, somebody picking up the phone. Other people, only like text messages or emails. So really interesting to find out if you're working with a diverse group of people, how they like to work.
Can I add to that as well?
Yeah.
I know from a freelance perspective, I think the expectation should be that many businesses are only going to potentially get freelancers in when they absolutely have to during this period. And so that might mean that we may be stepping into environments where people are quite stressed because perhaps the deadline hasn't been reached or something hasn't gone right that has prompted the need for the freelancer in the first place. So I think it's also about being able to recognize when people are perhaps a little bit more hypervigilant than usual and being able to read that and to perhaps bring a little bit of empathy or compassion or proactivity to that equation as well.
Right. Adapt quickly. So not everything you do as a team is going to result in success instantly. There will be a few mistakes along the way, but getting hung up on mistakes only throws a spanner in the path of progress. That's why flexibility is one of the key traits of being a team player. Next time you encounter a problem, make sure you respond accordingly and quickly. Avoid office politics. You probably think that this doesn't happen if we're not actually physically together, but it can still happen, and it makes for a really toxic environment, even when you're working remotely. So always treat co-workers with respect and don't become the office or the Zoom gossip. If you have an issue with someone, try and address it with them correctly. And then if that doesn't work, then do speak to your HR manager so that it can be resolved quickly. Focus on the team goals. This is really important. While you want to distinguish yourself as a top performer, it's still important to focus on the bigger picture when working in a group project. The ultimate foundation of being a team member is a person being willing and able to put the team's interest above their own. So you may have done a fantastic job on part of the presentation, but the person that was really responsible for it, it doesn't matter. It's all a teamwork. Everybody contributes to this. So focus on the team goals and not just your own. It will get you a lot further. And celebrate your co-workers' successes. This is great. One of the easiest ways to build authentic relationships is actually to give credit where credit is due. So if you're at the next team meeting and somebody produced something really well, or they did a great job, do a little shout out. Say that they did a great job. And, oh, by the way, that's made my life easier this week because, Lawrence actually did most of the work. So thank you, great teamwork. And that is teamwork when people come together and do things. So. And
I can assure you all that every time Vanessa has a success, I make sure I celebrate it by having a glass of champagne in her honor.
Yeah, that's teamwork.
It's teamwork.
Yeah. No, but actually we're really good with that, Lawrence. When we have our weekly meetings with our MD, we're always saying, but, Lawrence did that, so it made it easier for me and vice versa. And it just makes such a better working place when you are working as a team.
So does champagne.
Yeah, so does champagne, even virtually.
Yes. And according to the news, there's a lot of champagne in France that's not being sold.
Exactly.
I know. We are so in the wrong country.
I want to help. I want to help. I really do.
Won't somebody think of the champagne growers or producers? Yeah.
I think you're next. Oh,
no, it's a thank you. It's it. That felt like a bit of a ramble. I hope that people found that beneficial in some way, or at least got some insight there. Does anyone have any questions at all about this or anything in general, the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? 42, isn't it, from memory, according to Douglas Adams?
Has this helped? I know it's nothing new, but has it helped everybody?
I think the key thing that I want people to consider from this is that our world is changing constantly. And as I said at the start, while people fear change, the reality is that there's a lot of really positive things to come out of this period of time. And the more that we can begin to recognize what those changes are and embrace them, encourage them, be innovative with them, I think the more ahead of the pack we're going to be as things start to find their feet again and as opportunities start to come up again. And so that's the one thing I do encourage everyone is that, working from home is the new norm right now. And I suspect it's going to filter through into post-pandemic life as well. Yeah. So, how can we embrace it differently and make the best of this?
Yeah. Jane has said the Holy Grail is a room for each person working from home, is a workspace in a room with a door that shuts. Yeah, I think that's why Lawrence said at the beginning there was somebody who actually was working in the bathroom. I mean,
I think especially if you're introverted in nature as well, working from home is like, it's awesome. So.
Claire, you had a question?
No, not more of a question. A couple of other tips from me, having completely onboarded a whole new job in this pandemic virtually in the last month. Just a couple of big tips from me. One, invest in a really good set of headphones. I have these brand new Jabra Evolve 75, and they completely cancel out all background noise, which is awesome. Really good microphones, so yeah, it's amazing what sort of headsets are out there. So that could help as well, especially if you need to concentrate or you've got the other partner in the room really loud with the coffee machine and things like that. So and the other thing is, if you are in team meeting, just do the simple thing of like hitting that raise your hand button to talk. And I think that, yeah, and that's what I've sort of been doing in our teams, and it's working really well. So yeah, some really good tips there, guys, that I'm going to take with me in my whole new not whole new role. And Lawrence, I really like your tip about thinking outside the box, because that's how I sort of got this role with a marketing background. After I went into a communications role, because I've had a lot of communication experience in the past. So just that thinking out of the box really resonated with me.
Thanks.
And also for you, Claire, it was a lot of networking as well via, LinkedIn, that actually the opportunity arose for you to get a contract during this, tough time. It was amazing. We didn't place you there, but I was so excited because you'd been coming to the webinars, you'd been learning a lot of stuff, and then, it happened. So fantastic. And the one about putting up the hand is actually really good if you've got a screen behind you, because sometimes the hand gets lost.
Yeah.
It's not working now, but usually it does. So yeah, I really like that. I like that.
Yeah, it's I think it's and just having that clear background, and my lighting's not great today for some reason. Apologies about that. I've had to move things around, but just having those test runs for those still looking for work. Just doing a test run of Zoom or test run with someone else in your home if you can, or a friend remotely, because allowing you to play with the backgrounds and things like that will make you feel just that little bit more reassured.
I think
as well.
Being a little bit agile with how you do meetings. So even this morning, I had a meeting with a client, and their internet connection wasn't the best, and so in the end, we end up moving part of the meeting to the phone while keeping the visual on. So sometimes it's about thinking outside the box a little bit about these technical challenges that inevitably are going to happen.
Yeah, and I think with everyone using the internet at home, there are bound to be technical difficulties, and most people are, appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But having done the whole onboarding process remotely, it's been great. So, and just meeting everyone virtually, as opposed to being in the actual office. It's a whole new way of the world, so to speak. So, yeah, it's been great. And thank you guys for the support with the webinars, because the webinars have certainly helped to where I get today. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone got any other questions or observations or insights or
to share?
Shares? No sunnies? No? Well, that's a quick and painless one then, isn't it?
But look, we'd also love your feedback on things that you would like to hear in the future. We say that each time. I mean, it's really just Lawrence and I guessing. So if anyone has any input on what they'd like to hear, or special guest speakers, then Lawrence and I can make that happen.
Yeah. Just before we leave, Jane says another team player tip is to be conscious of things that other people are waiting on. Try not to hold people up unnecessarily.
It's all teamwork.
So if you think of any other ones, then feel free to send them through to us, and we can make sure they get placed up against the replay as well. And if you do think of anything that, as Vanessa's just said, that you would like us to cover in a topic, please do let us know. Where bingo, says Michelle. Yeah, maybe bingo for the next one.
Maybe. You know what? Maybe we need something like that. And Michelle, we might have to get your design techniques there to help us with the...
That could be.
How are we going to send it out? We're going to... Lawrence and I
workshop it.
talking about this. We will workshop this
We'll
week.
workshop. It might be a fun one instead.
I think so.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yes, please.
You had me at champ. Okay, well, in that case, we'll let everyone go for the time being, but thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us. I actually really look forward to this and seeing familiar faces. So it's great. Thank you.
And we'll see you all guys in a fortnight.
Oh, wow. I love the tropical.
Sylvia's showing off about the tropical background there.
I'm trying to get rid of it. I don't know how.
Sydney is tropical anyway, Sylvian, for us. So you don't need to put palm trees in the back. Okay,
Thank
guys. Great to see you all.
Thank you.
See you guys soon.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.